I get asked a lot, do I really need to rebias my amp every time I change power tubes? And the answer is, it depends. If you have a cathode biased amp, an AC30, many others, no, you just need to make sure that the new pair or quad are matched and that there are no issues, typically, which we'll exhibit in the first 15, 20 minutes. You could have a tube that starts to cherry plate, a bad tube. You could have way too much hum because they're not drawing the equal amount of current and there won't be as much hum rejection in the output section. But that's cathode biased amps. Most amps in the world, I'm pretty sure that's the statistic, are fixed bias amps. Now, fixed bias amps come in two categories. Non-adjustable fixed bias, and that could be an old Princeton, or that could be many, many Mesas, 5150s, etc., where there is not an adjustment for the bias in the amp, and to get around that, they just set the bias pretty cold. The old Princetons have a much warmer bias than most Mesas or 5150s. All those amps can be made to have adjustable fixed bias. Adjustable fixed bias is what you'd find in a deluxe reverb, in a Marshall 50 watt, in a twin reverb. Fixed bias is the most common form of output section that we encounter as guitarists, and most of them have adjustable fixed bias. Now on this deluxe reverb, it had very microphonic 6V6s, had some old JJ 6V6S tubes, which used to be one of the best 6V6s on the market. They were very rugged, they could take high voltage, but in the last couple of years, they've begun to get increasingly microphonic in a combo amp, where the speaker is not far from the tube, and as the speaker vibrates, the tube vibrates. Everything inside the tube vibrates, and it all gets shook up. No Elvis reference really intended, but there it is. And they're very prone to microphonics. And if you heard the previous video on this deluxe reverb, you heard that microphonic output tube. So I just put in a pair of Electro-Harmonix 6V6 GTs, which in my experience tend to be the best ones on the market right now. Now that could change any week, any month, but for right now, they're a pretty good bet. I don't remember what the bias was with the JJs. I had checked that a week ago, and they were fine. When I put the Electro-Harmonix in this deluxe reverb and checked the bias with all the settings the same from how they were for the JJs, the bias was at 105%. That's pretty damn hot. I set it to my preferred 55% idle with 120 volts coming out of the wall. That gives a really good sound in a deluxe reverb. Most Fenders, really, for 6V6 or 6L6. You can go hotter, but Fender tended to do like 47 to 53%. If you look at the values in an old Fender and adjust the wall voltages accordingly. And that's what I found in most of those. So this is now at 53%. If I had just put the tubes in and powered it on, it would have worked, would have had a sound. I could have shipped back to given back to the customer, and he'd have no end of problems, and those tubes would not have lasted long, and they probably would have burned something in the amp. So yeah, in this case, it was very necessary to rebias for the new tubes. And I suspect that those JJs along the path to getting microphonic became weaker. Now there's a little bit of an overlap there because the JJ is technically a 14 watt tube and the Electro-Harmonix is technically a 12 watt, but it can handle 14 watts. But 105%, 55%, that's not a little bit of overlap. Those JJs, which were not at 105% when they were in the amp, were weak. And so someone had turned the bias supply up. I verified that it was in the safe range, moved on, found that they were noisy, put in the JJs, and that bias setting was just too damn hot. So yeah, that's the saga of changing tubes and rebiasing this deluxe reverb. Now, this deluxe reverb I was hoping to give back to the owner today. And when I record this, it's Thursday, but you'll see this on Saturday. But there is a higher than I would like noise floor to this deluxe reverb still. I'm going to call the owner in the morning and let him know that I'd like to open it back up and chase that down. It could be a plate resistor. It could be wire layout. It could be a tube. A lot of things it could be. But aside from that higher noise floor than I'd like, the amp is wise sounding quite nice. Here, I'll do the Beato Vision thing for you guys. Now, traditionally, I've never shown my face in any of the playing videos because I tend to make ugly guitar player faces. I've had girlfriends in the past who are like, could you chew gum or something on stage so you don't do that? I was John Mayer before John Mayer was cool. Anyway, I will try to dial back the facial acrobatics. And once I track down that noise, which you can't really hear here, but I've got the volume just below 2 because it's right at my ear level. If I had it up at 3 or 4, which is where most people would gig with it, that hiss is a little too apparent. Real quick, I am also trying to find the time to refresh my chordal vocabulary in the jazzier side of things, the jazzy blues side of things. I'm about to stop this and play a really good lesson I found on some Joe Pass blues exercises. And just, my chops are rusty. I fall back on the same cliches. I need to, both for myself and to keep you guys more into what I do on the channel, I need to increase that. And I can't. I try to cover a lot of different genres. I can really only play the things that I love, and so I, no offense to anyone, I probably won't be your source for Dokken riffs, but if a Dokken amp comes in, I will give it my best and make sure the amp is Dokken player approved before it goes out. But man, my rust is just criminal, and I used to be a much better player, even aside from the wrist pains I'm having these days and the finger damage I've been living with for 20 years. So I just need to get it back. So a lot of that kind of stuff, which I'll do off camera. Thanks for your time. Thanks for your interest. I hope this was interesting to some of you. Hope this answers some questions, and I'm going to be, as you can tell, trying to step everything up here in the future, and I have no idea what the level of the voice is on playback. I'll try to even it out as necessary. It's a fun game to play.